Welcome to Charts Today. It is Wednesday, the 19th of August, and we have inflation numbers out in the UK at 2.9%, up from 2.6%, mostly driven by energy, not really changing very much in terms of the UK currency, and bond yields have pulled back globally. So we are just really in this waiting game with inflation. So it's really quite key. If we look at the reaction in the UK market, it's down 0.25%, and really just struggling to break to new highs. So fairly mixed picture generally. If we look at just some of the other things like the yen, dollar yen, we're seeing here that pullback, which is the intervention, so yen strength, but then we find a floor. We are still in a long-term uptrend there as well. And if we look at Bitcoin, this is still looking pretty bearish. The Nasdaq, we're up very slightly this morning on the future, but again struggling to make a new high, and that is largely driven by chip stocks, which we'll take a look at in a minute. We're seeing the DAX in Germany just slightly lower. The Japanese market was down, so that's sort of pulling back, but within trend. Weaker yen has meant higher earnings for Japanese companies. We're seeing the Sensex in India pulling back from that attempt to recover, and that's the key thing. Recoveries often take time. The Aussie market a little bit lower, and China was down 2.5%. Again, really just a very flat performance over the past year. One of the big drivers is energy, of course. We're seeing crude oil remaining elevated. Really quite key. We're seeing European gas prices. They made a 3.5-year closing high yesterday. We have been higher, but not closed that high, so really quite significant there. And if we look at the UK power price, that also gave a new upside target yesterday, breaking to a new high. So this is what's feeding into UK inflation. And then if we look at things like jet fuel, again, this is the short-term picture. But again, just over this month so far, we've had jet prices from $130 to suddenly $160. So that all adds to inflationary pressures. And then if we look at some of the other things that might be driving inflation, we get down to some of the commodities and things like not every commodity is rising. This is oats, a bit of a mixed picture there. Rice, which is obviously really important in a lot of Asian economies, that has gone from below $10 to $14. So that is really having a big impact. And then we get to other things like cattle. That has been relatively flat. But we then get to sugar. And again, this has been a really big turnaround for sugar. And that's just really, that really strong turnaround there is having an effect. So definitely something to watch. Looking at the other things that have gone on, if gold is up 0.5%, this really does feel like it's turned a corner. Still too early to say. A move above 44.50 would be encouraging in that regard. And if we look at the daily chart here, we are just testing the cloud, and on the long term finding support on the cloud. So gold still holding up there. The semiconductor index is recovering off a low point, but we did see a very big potential engulfing candle there yesterday. That's yesterday's candle. And that was, of course, a very big engulfing candle at the top after a big run in candles. So quite interesting that we're seeing that. And if we look at SpaceX, 150 is just a move too far at the moment for SpaceX. Apple is about the only stock that's really properly bucking the trend. So if we look at the short-term chart, there's the medium term for Apple, the daily chart. We are just struggling really to continue that pattern. We are still holding above the cloud, but on the whole, a lot of things down. And chips, as I mentioned, pretty badly hit. Nvidia down 2.3%, and Meta in the news with this potential legal action that's going on in the US. Looking at the Dow, it was really quite hard to find stocks that are in a clear trend. Johnson & Johnson, one of the best defensives, in a clear uptrend. Nike in a very clear downtrend. Chevron certainly looking a little bit better, breaking to new highs and activating that target. And if we look at stocks like Procter and Gamble, just really struggling there, and that's really quite key. And then if JP Morgan was another one I was looking at this morning, has broken higher and trending. So it's really quite hard to find the performance at the moment. The Nasdaq, as I mentioned, chip stocks were badly hit yesterday. The best performers were Intuit, Adobe. These are starting to look like recovery plays, but really one of the problems with recoveries is they can take a very long time and you do get false dawns. But looking at the chips, this is Seagate down 9% yesterday. Those targets were largely met, so that's quite key. Western Digital, we're seeing here it was largely chips. Micron down 7%. Really quite big. ARM down nearly 7%, Intel down 6.5%. So we're seeing very much that chips were struggling. Looking at the UK this morning, we are seeing that it is mostly resource stocks that are up. BP, Rio. We are seeing it's mostly resource stocks like Glencore, but on the downside, and there are more stocks falling. Again, we are seeing it. Relx, this is the example of a situation here with Relx where we've got a downtrend and then just a failed recovery. So that's it for today. Just keep an eye on those trends. Watch the gold price. That's going to be quite key, especially if we see these inflationary pressures building over the longer term. Until tomorrow, happy charting. Bye for now.